Okay, we're starting it up here. Welcome, everyone. I think I was going to start off. I'll share my screen. We'll just go through the roadmap very quickly, and then you can ask questions on that. Just it is good to have everyone on board. I know questions keep getting asked. It seems like we haven't been rolling out as many new features recently, and we've been deboinking the test net. But let me just share my screen really quick. I think is the easiest way to do this first one here. And this is just on a high level, these are the FIPS. Is it shared?
Yep, we see it.
Just not green outlined, interesting. Okay, so yeah, this is what we have going right now. This small little thing called FIP12 action whitelisting is the big thing. We've called it the Gemini release because there's several phases to it. It's what we just went through with testnet, where we did the initial rollout of the chain code, V200 chain code, and then we rolled out this actual contract update, which allows us to move. We do this, what we call whitelisting of actions. And previous to this rollout, those actions were actually hard-coded into the chain code. It was a design decision that we made a while back that we had discussed, and then it kind of just slipped through without further discussion. So what this update does is allows us to put that whitelist into state, which makes it much easier to update and move forward than it's just a contract update. And we don't, basically would have had to fork the change for every action we added, which is not a good thing. So we've got these backlogs of items in this ready to deploy column here. The transferring of the FIO domain, the FIP2, so you can go out there and review the FIPs, but those are actually already baked in. So that code, any changes to the chain code that those require are actually in V2.0, so they're already out there. So when we're ready, once we've completed the actual whitelisting, so I'll walk through that again, we roll out the chain code V2.0. We're working with our partners, our exchanges, and our wallets on that right now. They're underway for the most part. We've been hearing back. They've had a few updates. I'm trying to get them into that channel we created, the integrator channel. So Todd, I know, has been discussing with them offline a bit, but I'm going to try and move those into that channel and get those guys to join that. And hopefully I can do that today, tomorrow. Once that gets updated, we roll out this whitelisting contract, and then we do a second contract, which we're calling the actual fork event, where we'll actually do some add actions that into the state, the new state table. If any, at that point, anyone who hasn't upgraded to the 2.0 on the chain code will start to fork off there. So that's the critical timing, and it's flexible on when we do that. And then we actually have a date baked into the code. And again, this is out there on that issue as well, where we have the schedule, where we actually stop using the on-chain lookups and we move to the state lookups for the whitelisting. So those events have to happen. We have it on I think it was a 5 to 6 week time period. My guess is we'll be well ahead of that. And if at some point we decide everyone's upgraded and we're ready to move forward, we can move forward with these contract updates at any time. So just that, once those are done, we may try and fit a few other things in there. We're having discussions on that. I don't think it's worth kind of going through those right now, but the next thing will be then the contract updates for FIPS 1A, 2, 3, and 4. And then we get to the next one, which is the redesigned fee computations. This moves us away from having to do the MSIG to update fees, essentially, just where we select the fees and do it, though that worked fairly well. And thank you all for creating those MSIGs, rolling them out, and getting them done for the pricing. That's great. This one gets us back to every VP can start setting their fees again, the multiplier, right, and the SUF amount, and we can get back to that median computation type stuff. So but that comes with this FIP10. And then there's, these are in somewhat order. We think they'll be rolled out after that. We actually have a lot of backlogs, so I think it'll be fun to be, once again, rolling out some features and new features, maybe every couple of weeks. I don't want to go crazy with it because I do want to make sure we have proper testing on all those. But, you know, we have a lot already coded up, and I'll call them in ready to deploy because they've actually gone through internal QA. So we got a lot going on there. So that's what we have. Any questions? I'll open it up.
Yeah, just a quick clarifying point. So in development, that column are essentially things that are ready to deploy, but they do have new actions, right? So we have to deploy those after the hard-coded date in the code because it's only that hard-coded date that actually switches the code over from using the on-chain method of whitelisting actions to the actual smart contract listing of actions. Is that correct?
Yeah, those all have the new actions that aren't on the chain that will require an add action to the state table. Correct.
And the forking action you described is essentially, we're going to be, maybe I have this wrong, but I know after we get everyone on that same node, we still have to update those state tables with the right list of actions, right? And it's only when we add a new action that we do that after the date, right?
Yeah, the actual date baked into the code is the date when all lookups, we'll no longer be doing lookups in the chain code, because we'll have past that date, and it'll always be doing lookups in the state table. So we have to have those actions in there by then. Is that what you're asking me?
Yeah, I think so. So I'm just clarifying that, like, of these FIPS here, most of these are also ready to deploy in that in development column, right?
Yeah,
They're just waiting for, they're just kind of waiting for that deadline to pass. But they're ready to, we could actually, like you said, they've been tested and stuff.
Yeah, I could move actually, like, I think the top 3 of these into ready to deploy. I just kind of like this view because this is the next batch we'll probably roll into testnet. So yeah, that is true. This isn't totally accurate. They are.
But 1 through 4, to be clear, do not have any new actions, right? They can be deployed or not.
I mean, they have new actions, but the interesting thing is those actions, because they were part of the old 1.1, are on the chain and will be in the state, just like the old.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So they can be rolled
Excellent.
out. Yeah.
But not any of the others that are not in that column, correct? So that would be a reason to keep them separate.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I mean, so in theory, yeah, you could roll these out before that date, but and we've talked about doing the transfer FIO domain, right, Luke, before the actual date where we switch, because there is the transfer FIO domain on the chain, and it will be in the state table after that, kind of the updates to the state table with the add action. So we could roll that out before that date. Whether we want to do that, whether it's worth kind of the added testing and risk, is another question. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if there isn't a risk, I would definitely want to get that out as soon as possible. There's a lot of community members that have purchased domains a long time ago, and they want to be able to transfer them around.
So we may do that. Like, that's when I said, if we get all this done early, say we decide to roll it out next week, then we're still 3 weeks out from that date, and that's a lot of time, right? So if we can roll it out 2 weeks early, I think it might make sense. And we'll be testing that next week with Casey when he's back. Yeah, any other questions? All right. I guess with that, I'll stop sharing, Luke, and I don't know if anyone wants.
Well, just a real quick, just while we still got this screen up, on the FIP side of it, any feedback on the FIP process? I know it's kind of, we just kind of throw stuff on the wall and see what sticks in a sense, like as far as wanting to get feedback from block producers and those who are digging into the code. So just, I'd love to get some feedback on the FIP process itself. How well do you think it's working? Have any of you kind of toyed around with creating your own, for example? Because the goal here is obviously to eventually decentralize the development of the chain as well. And thankfully, we've got a great team with Dapix that is on board with that plan. A lot of people might be threatened by that, but they're like, no, that's great. They want to be part of a decentralized community. And so I just wanted to see, is there anything we can do from the foundation side to kind of make that FIP process more obvious, more accessible? Obviously, like FIP 5 is a really big, important privacy solution that we're still evaluating and designing. And we would love to have more people involved in that type of stuff. So just wanted to ask a specific question. How do you guys feel about the FIP process?
I'd like to have access to this board, because I just looked on GitHub. We don't see the overview like you have now.
Oh, let me post it out. Yeah.
That's just in the project view?
Yeah, but I mean, we as GitHub members, we don't see that.
So if you go to the kind of,
we don't have projects.
You
I'm just looking
have
at
the
it
projects link here.
now.
It's not public, I think. It should be.
I can see it. I can see it, Stan.
Okay, on my side it's 404.
I've got it.
Okay. Maybe someone kicked me out of the organization.
You were making too many FIPS.
Actually, I need to make one, but but okay, we can just do it off in the chat. But basically, this is a great overview of actually what's going on, what is happening, and it's great to actually maybe to point us to this kind of view instead of pointing to each individual FIP, just to have an overview of what is burning, what needs to be reviewed and stuff like that. So that would be awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, just to be clear, the project view is on the repo, like the root, not an individual repo. So if you're at the FIO repo or the FIPS repo or anything like that, you won't see it. Go all the way back to FIO Protocol, the account, the organization, and then you'll see projects there. I just did it from an incognito window, so you definitely don't need to have an account to see it.
Projects. Okay, yeah, now I see it. Oh, cool.
Yeah, and that's the idea. I mean, this is what, if you want to go look, and I can add some more columns too, but if you want to go look, say what's coming into testnet next is going to be a contract. It's current planning. If we don't break out the domain piece, which we might, it would be, here's what's coming up next. And maybe I could just put a column in like pending for testnet, once we really know what's coming next, and I can break these out a little bit so you really know what the pipeline looks like. So yeah,
which you could, I was going to say, you could add milestones in for that, so we know roughly when releases are coming up and what's going to be in those. Would be pretty nice.
To the left, there should be one more column for reviewing, right? To review before it's getting before the development starts. There should be one more column to the left.
Wait, you mean before development starts? Because I think.
Or maybe one more.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So because we do have the FIPS themselves have a process for like. And Pavo and I kind of go back and forth about, okay, we threw this over the fence and we've asked the block producers to take a look or the community to take a look. And we go through that process where it's kind of subjective, frankly, as to when something comes from, in review to being like approved, that process of it transitioning from, a draft into something accepted. I'd be open to showing that in that view as well, Eric. If therefore that would be an actionable item for the block producers. Anything in that column that's in that draft form, we want you to really go in there and rip apart, right?
Yeah, I could add draft and accepted. Those are good columns.
Yeah.
One of the challenges that I've had as someone who is drafting FIPS and working on FIPS is, I really desire continuous engagement from the block producers and really detailed engagement from the block producers. Like I want a focused design meeting when I'm trying to make changes or thinking of changes. And I want to get together those activities and stimulate, kind of design discussions and detailed code reviews so that our code can be the best it can be. So how can we, get and enrich the interactions that we do as a FIP goes through development? That's a question I have.
It's pretty hard to follow because you how many developers in the team? 3 or 4 developers actively developing. It's just difficult to follow up everything.
I agree.
I think saying what you just said is a good start.
Yeah, I think one way might be to present at meetings like this. The details of a FIP and have a discussion around it.
That might be nice. During one of the block producer meetings, we could pick a FIP and kind of do, a half-hour dive into it maybe. That might be useful, yeah.
And basically this overview, just a Kanban column with those which need attention of producers. So that would help basically. So just because we can't just sometimes just there's a new FIP in the chat. We don't have time right now. We'll put it to some reviewing later, right? And later we just forget because there's 1,000 of other things. So an overview of things that need attention that would be helpful a lot.
I wonder if it makes sense to create, like I was talking about in the Jira environment, Pavel, that you've been working on. We've got a track for our business development team that's working there. We've also got a track for our worker proposals that get submitted through the form we have. And I'm wondering if it might make sense just to create a proposal, a worker proposal or something, for lack of a better way to do it. and just basically have subtasks for all the BPs. And so every time we do a new FIP, they get a notification, right? They would say, hey, here's a new FIP, and you've got a subtask to review it. And that way you've got something, that you're connected to in a format that is a little more structured. The Jira environment allows us to kind of create workflows, and there's Kanban boards there as well. That's one idea. I think another idea I was just having as I was thinking about this is, as we do the FIPs, sometimes it's not clear from the FIP structure, and maybe this is something we could do a little bit differently, maybe as a comment or an edit on the FIP itself, is as soon as a developer starts actually working on something, maybe connect it to the branch so that in the process of development, Ed, you could get that kind of feedback. So block producers know what's the current state of this FIP. Like FIP 5, for example, there's 0 code written. It's still in the we're still working out the design, but there are other FIPs I know that are done and other FIPs that are being developed, right? So connecting from the FIP to the actual branch the developer's working on would be helpful.
I started to do that on FIP 10, and I did this because I was leaving for vacation soon, and I want to make sure that we can connect the dots. I think that's a really great idea. And on FIP 10, I kind of did that. I added sections for testing and dev branches and just the state of development. It's kind of in there. I don't know if that's the format we want or not. But.
Well, Luke, that'll happen too when we move over all of the stories we're tracking into the public Atlassian, because we usually have a epic that aligns with the FIP. And with that, you have the stories that show, okay, here's the check-in, but maybe we could actually make the UI for those better. And maybe that does eventually replace the FIP status page. And because this is easy to create in Atlassian, really easy. And when you open this up, you could actually have links to all the relevant things for the VPs, right? So that might solve that when we get there, Luke. And
yeah, I was gonna mention that same thing is, and maybe that's actually something worth bringing up in this meeting as well. I don't know if everybody's aware, but we have been spending a lot of energy recently to set up the Atlassian tech stack. So the FIO Protocol, the foundation actually was granted a free license to use the Atlassian set of tools, which includes Jira and Wiki and Service Desk and all sorts of tools that are kind of great to use and typically pretty expensive, but actually available to the foundation for free. So we're in the process of actually setting up all sorts of workflows and repository of information that will be used for different purposes. For example, we're setting up a FIO community wiki. We're setting a worker proposal workflow where people can submit worker proposals and view and comment. We've actually moved BizDev tasks to Jira as well. And I think Eric is in the process of trying to move the entire core development tracking out of the DAPIX private Jira into this public Jira as well. And we have a lot of permission capability in there where we can kind of set up smaller groups.
I already did it. See, Pavo, here that's it. There's our pipeline right there.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, and also, we can potentially set up, like we're contemplating if you guys would be interested in having like a BP section in there, right? Which is only accessible to block producers. And that could include, whatever you felt is beneficial to have access. And then, you can have your own admins that basically people who are allowed to let people in and stuff like that. So all of those tools are available. We just started to kind of configure all of this. And going back to the FIP process, we kind of loosely just had one conversation with Eric about it, that, yeah, it probably makes sense to actually fold the FIP tracking into our development process, right? Because that's eventually what it is. FIP is just, the earlier stage of an issue, right? So it's kind of more like an epic, like, hey, here's an idea, here's the spec, and now it potentially is broken up into multiple tasks. So yeah, I think that's, first of all, I wanted you guys to let you know, I can post the link here real quick to the community board that we just set up. And I encourage you to, if you haven't already, just register for free, or if you already have an Atlassian account, you can just associate it with that project, and then you will have access to kind of the base functionality and whatever group you're part of, you can be added to as well. Here's the link.
Yeah, and if
So,
you don't have an account, it's actually really confusing, but the little icon on the very top right that looks like a logout icon, that's actually how you sign up. It's really
yeah, I've
easy.
actually added a link right on the homepage. So it says login or create account. It's now on the homepage. So you don't have to like go hunting for that little link.
Oh, but there should be some tools for integrating GitHub with Atlassian. At least that's what Block One is doing. They have their public GitHub for all public interaction, and they have their own Jira and other tools, and somehow they reflect basically. I just noticed that my ticket that I opened on GitHub was marked as transferred to Jira for further processing, and then they published the end result in GitHub. So there are some integration processes. I think GitHub is pretty good for us to have an overview of what's going on. If we have an overview of FIPS that need attention or need early review, that will help. Going deep into your basically design and development process, not sure. Out of 30 teams we have on BP list, many of people are not developers or don't have enough knowledge to go deep into the code. So
I think that raises a good point in that I'm actually hoping and expecting at some point, some of our more technical BPs would want to participate at a higher level potentially beyond just their normal BP role. And that is something I think the foundation would be open to say, okay, just like, you get your pay as a BP, but there also is like a worker proposal potential of someone saying, hey, I actually want to help at a higher level and, kind of make it more of my day-to-day activities. I see that as making sense. This is one of the kind of things that we're going to have to, and I've, you guys know I've been in the DPoS space for like 4 years now, and I've never seen it perfectly handled as far as like the expectations on a block producer for the pay they get. It's always a little bit gray, and it's never perfect. There's never a meritocracy that, well, this person did this much effort and they got paid exactly according to their effort. You guys have probably seen me where I'm pasting that output of that script I made to see, so we can all see the pay. It's never going to be perfect, but I do think that, we're going to try to work towards a good balance where, as a block producer, your roles and responsibilities are pretty clear. It's to maintain secure nodes. I mean, this is just my opinion. Obviously, everyone's got different opinions, but maintain your secure nodes. Be active in the process of securing the chain, which is like reviewing upgrades to the chain. You should at least be technical enough or have some technical people on your team, at the very least, to be able to review the code that you are actually putting your reputation on the line to run as a block producer. And then beyond that, adding value to the community. So that's a obviously big, broad category that can include marketing, development. There's a lot of great examples of that already in our community. But then something that's like above and beyond, where it's like a full role, and this is like hours and hours every day. I see that as in a slightly different category of additional work. And I see that as completely valid as far as any community member can fill out our proposal and get paid to add value.
in that respect, we have actually several different approaches already existing. In WAX, we have a scoring system, right? So there's a scoring committee, Inspector General, that is basically assessing the contribution of each block producer according to some formal criteria. It kind of works. There are always a lot of discussions and many unhappy faces.
Don't start, Stan. Don't start yet. We are finishing the work, and I'm expecting the shitstorm starting tomorrow. So far,
that is actually, I do want to learn from the great work that the WAX team has done. I've had conversations with a couple people, Rob from Detroit and others who are directly involved in that. And I do want to move that direction, learn from that, and implement something like it. That would be great.
Yeah, we have been developing this framework for like 10 months already, and it's not perfect. I admit that, but it's improving in every iteration. So every month we are working on it, and it's slowly improving.
Well, there's still a lot of unhappy faces, right? So people who feel that they actually put their sweat and blood into the project and they get no rewards, or they are at the bottom of the pay line. So I just pasted in the chat another article I wrote about half a year ago, just with some other ideas, basically how this could be organized, because we can split the jobs. There's the job of maintaining a node, and there's a job of providing some specific APIs and so on. So basically, it could be also, the whole budget could be split into multiple parts and assigned accordingly to that. So it's open, right? So we have WAX model, we have EOS model where it goes totally crazy, right? Telos is somewhere basically on a different level, right? So but on Telos, it's mostly run by enthusiasts. So the payment is so low that basically people run their nodes at loss or almost for free. So that's not a good model. So yeah.
Eric, do you want to? Is there anything else you want to share screen-wise or not? Just I was thinking we could.
I just posted a link, but basically we can do it off this.
There we go. Yeah, I was just saying I want to just look at faces if we're not sharing anything in specific. Thank you, Stan. I'll look forward to reading that. I don't know if you guys saw, there was a little bit of drama on mainnet where, Colin Talks Crypto just unvoted EOS Nation, and there was all this like, so I did a little video review of my perspective on that because I was, early proxy as well. But it did bring up the question in my mind again about one token, one vote, because there was some discussions about, and even actually a really great video that just got published. It was a 25-minute video, a really great deep dive into FIO. And he went on and on in the video about it being one token, one vote. And I had to go, oh man, such a great video, 25 minutes video, but actually it's not. So I corrected him, and he took down the voice post, which is sad because then I lost my big old thing that I had a top comment on because I had voiced it. But he did a new one today. I just noticed this morning. And so he redid the whole 25-minute video. But it was an interesting question about, I know Dan Larimer has been public about one token, one vote. There's been a lot of drama about whether or not that actually helps or not. But those are the type of things eventually I'd like to, explore. I think currently my stance is I'm going to go behind EOS mainnet, right? They have a lot more value than FIO. So if they're comfortable with the new governance change, that's generally something I'm going to be comfortable with. I think Telos and other chains might be a more appropriate place to do more extreme experiments in governance. That said, fully open to whatever you guys propose. If somebody puts a FIP out there to be like, hey, one token, one vote's better, and here's why we need it on FIO or whatever, I'm definitely open to discussing and reviewing it. All right, well, so we've talked about the FIP process. That was a great discussion. We've talked about our Jira board and how we can make that a little more helpful in organizing for you guys. Ed, I appreciate your request to kind of have more engagement, involvement with the development side of things. Are there any other topics that we want to discuss?
Aren't we going to try to list what, like there were some things that VPs need to fire maybe once every day if all of us did it or something like that? I mean, even if they're stopgaps until features come down the line, but just, I don't know, and maybe it's on those boards. I didn't know whether to stick it in there too, but just a general idea. I mean, Google Spreadsheets, everybody pick a time, it's just as easy. Or something, I guess that makes sense. Anyway, question.
Yeah. There are maintenance calls on the FIO chain, and actually, this is one of those things that came up yesterday and the day before, and we were kind of all surprised that even within our own the Dabix team even it wasn't super clear, and we probably haven't done a great job of explaining this either to the wallets or to the VPs. But essentially, these maintenance calls, as far as I understand them, they don't cost anything. They're free, and they go in cycles. They'll do like 100 entries at a time. And the idea is that with the TPID claim, for example, there's enough incentive for somebody to call it so they can get their rewards, and everyone gets their rewards as long as somebody calls it. So it's a little bit different than VP claim, where you only get your own rewards. This is kind of like a claim for the whole network. There's that, and then there's another call that I believe is about expiring, domains and addresses and removing those from the system. Of course, we don't have any of those until March of next year. So I think those are the only two. Maybe Adam or Ed or Pablo or Eric might want to jump in with more. I don't know that we necessarily need a spreadsheet. What might be better is just a report on last called. And so there's just some way, maybe even in the Telegram bot or something, just daily, hey, the last time this was called was whatever. So that at least somebody calls it. But whatever you guys want to do, it made sense for us to be like, let's just ask the block producers to do it. Because clearly the wallets aren't, they're not as technically in the weeds enough to understand this stuff as much. Whereas you guys are running a server that is talking to the chain all the time. So it might make more sense.
Yeah, I mean, we just set up cron jobs and fire, especially if it didn't cost anything. The question is, the frequency and the duration between, once a day and one person runs it, shit, I'll do it. But I mean, do you need it a couple times a day? I mean, that'll, hell, we can get 3 or 4 of us.
Yeah,
but we need to know which ones they are.
Is there any problem to run with the claim rewards?
No. In fact, that's what Todd recommended originally. This one doesn't need to be called that much. So that might be overkill, but for a free call, it's not a expensive call.
And also, it's important to note that the way this works, so obviously it's going to depend on how many TPITs need to be paid,
I'm in a
right?
meeting, so I can't close it. I'll check it when I'm done.
Hey, Brad, can you mute your line?
Oh.
Sorry. So initially it might be once a day is fine, right? But once you start getting more and more of those TPIT payouts, then you probably need to run it more frequently. Running it as together with Claim BP is actually not a problem because we build it in such a way that if there are no TPITs to be paid, it actually errors out. So it just returns an exception and therefore is not even written to the block log. So so you can basically call it as often as you want.
Cool.
And
that's the same.
We might have like additional maintenance calls, right, Pavel? Like we've talked through, we have a lot of work to do as far as our state kind of efficiency and different things we're going to do to move things out of state and things of that nature. So those are type of things that we will probably have certain maintenance calls in the future, I'd imagine, right?
Yeah, I think so. But as of today, the paid TPIT is really the only one, obviously, in addition to Claim BP rewards that needs to be run regularly so that the TPITs get paid. I've run it a few times myself in the past, but obviously having someone just run it on a regular basis would be great. And then once we add new maintenance goals, or once we get to March, where we're going to need to start burning FIO addresses, and then we'll probably need to, potentially spin up more maintenance calls. But for now, that's the only one.
What about that second one that was brought up in Telegram? I forgot what the name was.
Burn expired, is that the one you're talking about?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that's basically it's not going to do anything until March, because what it does, it basically burns FIO addresses and domains that have expired and are past the grace period. So actually it's more than March, because it's going to be March plus 90 days. So it's going to be like June that you will actually start seeing FIO addresses or domains that were not renewed and past that grace period, and then they basically get burned and removed from state.
Okay, cool.
I mean, I have a question on so it would be easy to create a list of kind of these maintenance calls, right? But I'm starting to get confused on where you all want to collect that, because we have the FIO.wiki now, right? The FIO block producer knowledge base, but we also have the Dev Hub, which has some BP information on it. So we kind of are starting to get these. And then we have our knowledge base, and a lot of the knowledge base looks like it was copied over to the BP knowledge base. So that's going to be kind of difficult to maintain, I think. So I don't know if it might be worth having a strategy. Like if that is the BP wiki, I love that you guys are going to take that over and maintain it. I actually kind of like that because that's much easier to update and maintain than the current Dev Hub, I think, as a group. But then I think it does need a little bit of kind of thinking through of, what should go there and what shouldn't go there. And because right now, if I went there, there's a lot to look through just to say, okay, what's my role as a VP or something, which I would think would be the most important stuff for you.
Yeah, and by the way, we did copy everything over, but the intent was to delete a large chunk of it. At least as a starting point. We'll clean it up.
But if that's and it sounds like that's what you guys want to use, right, as your main source. So kind of copying over some of this documentation there, or using that, like I know Casey just put that multi-sig thing there, and everyone else can go and update that and improve on that, maybe the way to go. So something like this, what are the maintenance calls, is spread out and out there somewhere, but maybe we just need to aggregate it and create a page here. Is that what we're thinking?
I guess I had one thought was, isn't there like a scripts folder from, is it the official protocol repo, or is it, you know, just put a little header up there that says, hey, one of you suckers needs to run this once a day, and just, cause I mean, it's just a cron job, maybe give you know, some parameters for your account and perm. Anyway, just make it easy. I mean, all you need is a couple of us to schedule it, right? I mean, it doesn't need to be coordinated, it just needs to be done. So maybe that's, because all of us are going to have a copy of that code. Right.
Yeah, it sounds good. I think it also highlights just, you know, it was an example of, you know, a communication that we want to improve, right? And so that I think it was great for Eric to get this call scheduled. And this is kind of our first kind of one that we're planning on doing on a semi-regular basis. Now, we understand all of your time is super valuable, and we don't want to just have a meeting just to have a meeting. And I understand that you guys have other important things to do. And I also understand the pressure of like, oh, I better show up to the meeting so I'm seen as doing a good job, so I'll get those votes, right? Like, I get all that as a block producer on Steam and EOS Stack, like with EOS, you know, I get that. And at the same time, you know, it's like whenever there is something worth talking about, a system upgrade, things like that, I think it's great to have a forum where we can just chat, or you know, stuff we haven't thought about, or you know, a lot of what the block producers do when you guys represent the chain, you know, will bleed into other areas. It's going to bleed into marketing. It's going to bleed into business development. You know, there's going to be tools that we're all working on that are going to impact the success of the chain. So I kind of like this forum. I know I was kind of one of the early in the EOS mainnet launch, one of the early people saying this Zoom call is stupid, let's stop it, because it had a wrong intention at the time. You know, it was all about like, hey, I want to be noticed, and look, I'm putting on a conference, and look, I'm important, when it really had an initial intention that was different than that. But I think this might be something that could evolve into something more like that. But I don't know if that's the right approach. But I do know that, for example, voters do need to know you guys. They need to get a feel for what you're doing and how you're adding value to the chain. And if that's properly done, you know, that could be a great thing. I had a good call with Brad recently and we were talking about how, like, even the website at FIO Protocol, having a place where we can highlight community engagement, the people that have active proposals that are working to create value, and then also obviously the block producers as well. So these are all things that I'm really open to feedback on and curious of your thoughts on. I want to create a forum that hopefully does reward value, and not just the people who are, you know, good personalities and they do well on video. You know what I'm saying? So that's one of the challenges that I think we can work on together.
Look, can I just say something that I think it's very important for this quorum that we have here. This morning, I was chatting with Aaron from Greymass on the mainnet chat about some problem that we are having as well, which is related to the TP-ID idea, which is great, but for an integration like ours, which is an authenticator, not a wallet, it is just not enough. And I thought about that, and I thought that maybe creating a proxy account that has, like, for instance, 2 or 3 votes for the participants on that authentication project. Like, for instance, if I partnered with the Edge wallet, then they would have their own BP there and their own, and I would have mine. And the TP ID could just check if the account that is the destination, the TP ID, is a proxy, then split the payment among the accounts that are voted to. It's a very clean idea.
I like that, yeah.
It's a very clean idea to split payments. It's on chain, and it's very easy to maintain. I really think this is very interesting, and it got lost there on the chat this morning. And I just wanted to bring it here because I think it solves my problem. It solves also the problem that Greymass is having. And I don't know, maybe
I think it's a cool idea. I would love to see that as like the next step to that. So like you said, so it doesn't get lost in conversation.
Yeah.
Would be to take the template of a
I am ready to I am ready to create an issue and even create a PR if you guys.
I would say start with a FIP. You know, that's the design that we have going. So we're talking about a modification to the protocol. And the way I like to look at this is, let's fast forward 5-10 years. Let's say, you know, the whole world, billion people are using crypto, and a massive portion of that is using FIO, right? So this now becomes one of the financial centers of the world. We better freaking do it right? I want my kids to live in a financial world that isn't controlled by a bunch of, you know, violent people or whatever, right? So setting the framework for how we modify this protocol, even though it's kind of like just us and we're just kind of, you know, making improvements as we see fit. Down the road, 20, 30, 40 years from now, I want to make sure there's good governance on how this protocol changes over time, because it can quickly, and we've already seen this in Bitcoin world, where they're like, I want this particular thing because it helps my business, right? So they want to push a BIP, you know, that helps their business. And we got to be, you know, careful about that kind of stuff. And yet, in this case that you're giving, you're exactly right. Like the intent of the TPID is not served by authenticator wallets. And I agree with Greymass and Aaron that I think that's the future of wallets. They're going to probably move more to, you know, secure enclaves on the OS level. And we have to not lose that, right? That was the intent, is to reward them for that. So I think it's a great idea. I think you probably need some kind of flag so that it has to be explicitly set, because a lot of, you know, TPIDs might be any number of accounts, and they might one day turn on a proxy, and all of a sudden they're like, what the heck? All my funds just went to other people, right? So it'd have to be very explicit, I think, but I think it's a great idea. Okay, Anders, did you raise your hand to have a thought too? I thought I saw you. Okay, cool.
So I'll try to figure out a way to start a FIP for that.
Yeah, there's a template in there. There's a template, and it's probably good to talk about a little bit. I don't know probably if you want to do it, but I can give my thoughts on it. I haven't done one yet. I actually 3 days ago was saying I would, but I haven't had time. But there's a template there, and then you can see the other ones. It feels a little formal at first, but I think, you know, depending on the complexity and as we get more used to it, I think it's a good process, because it includes every piece of information you'd ever want to know to explain what it is you're about to do if you're going to go write some code. And after the code is written, and we have done this as well, we've actually updated FIPS after we've dove in, done a spike, done a, you know, actually written some code to figure out if it makes sense. You know, keeping those in sync is really nice. So when someone says, okay, how has this protocol evolved over time? And they look at the code changes from pull requests and different things like that and deploys on mainnet, then they have this beautiful documentation in the FIP of exactly what just got deployed. So I think that, and so if there's a bug or whatever, there's some issue, we can like, okay, what did we miss in the documentation, the testing, everything that we outlined in the FIP, and we can learn from that process, right? And I think it's a good approach.
I think I want to add a little color here too. Like, if you have an idea to start a FIP, and that idea is just like one paragraph, it's very general, and it's going to become more of a complete thought later, it's useful to start an issue at first, and then let that issue grow to become as detailed as a FIP requires. That's what I've done in my experience. So,
yeah, along those lines, I was also testing the TPID process yesterday and believe that I found a potential bug that I've been talking to Todd and team about. So essentially, when you auto proxy to an account, the proxy functionality doesn't take place. So while we're talking about that, I thought it was a good opportunity to bring that up. This may not be the forum for that, but just to make everyone.
Yeah, we discussed that in the stand-up today. Definitely, I know. I'm super glad that you noticed that and brought it to our attention. Thank you so very much. We're definitely going to be working on that.
Yep.
Awesome. And do you have I know you unmuted, Eric. You got thoughts on that, or Adam?
No, I was just going to say the same thing. That got so Todd brought that up. It got entered as a task, a bug. So we'll be throwing that into the queue. And again, once these are open, I can just post out the link to the the bug, and anyone who wants to track it can track that. But right now, it's still behind that firewall. So I got to get those out in the open. So we'll get there.
Great.
Absolutely. Yep. Already working on it even. I haven't even gotten the story, and it's already on right in front of me. I haven't found the issue yet, but there's been a little bit of regression with TPIT, I suspect. So it's definitely our focus. We want to get that fixed.
And if you ever want to kind of enter a bug or do anything like that, again, like Ed said, if you want to throw anything into an issue and then send us a link, I can always link out to that and keep that updated as well for bugs or kind of other discussion points.
Just a reminder, we have also another repository. It's called FIO.mainnet. It's almost empty and not a lot of is happening there. But this could be actually a place where operational issues could be opened, right? If you have a issue that needs to be raised, but it doesn't belong to the FIO protocol, but any kind of operational issue, we could use that repository for that kind of, and also scripts that are useful for BPs could be placed into that as well.
I like that.
Very cool. Hey, while I'm thinking about it, Stan, I think you talked about having a preferred, I know Todd, you worked on some new devs, I think, like a preferred deploy for exchanges, that would give them everything they need to do their I know we've talked about whether they need full history or, and then some people have talked about, the state history is the best approach and index it into different ways. We've got about 10 minutes left. That's a pretty big conversation. Not sure if I even want to open it, but it's one that I think that, is worth talking about, so that an exchange could just like show up, or even a wallet that wants to run their own node could just show up, get something, and there'll be, really clear instructions on how to run that node and properly filter for the account actions they're curious about.
That's a great one, though. We do not have that. And we opened that discussion. That'd be very helpful. We still are really doing kind of ad hoc over Telegram to get them bootstrapped up, which is probably not the best way.
Well, I mean, do they need history or not? I guess that's the big question.
It also depends what kind of history they want, right? So if it's an exchange, you're only interested in one account that is receiving money.
Well, that's actually not necessarily the case, and that's why I think it's really good to talk it through, because we want a full integration with the FIO protocol, and that actually includes every individual on their exchange having their own account potentially. And that's actually so far with the major exchanges, I believe that's how they've done it in a more UTXO model where there's individual accounts. But yeah, Todd, you've been working on this, right?
Well, I mean, yeah, it's every exchange has had different requirements and different ways they want to do things. And so, I mean, the closest I have is, that dev that gets everything installed, has the configs, pre-populated. And I'm also going to be adding a minimal one as well, in addition to that for others. But when it comes to history, I don't know. I mean, it's like,
I guess
put it in Elasticsearch,
it's all going to be a layer 2 solution. So, I mean, that's, I guess, the first question is that it's not going to be just a, run through, set up a node. I mean, V1 is, but that ain't going to last very long. So anything beyond that is some layer 2 bolt on and carries with it whatever its nuanced, system is, be it Elasticsearch, be it diffuse and all its, whatever. Gray mass, their thing, Anyway, long story short, I mean, but that's the fundamental question. What do they need? A node or a history node? Or their own information?
I've been thinking about that a lot, and I've been wondering, hopefully someday, the way I kind of envision it is that we import libraries all the time when we run a service or we write some code. And I would hopefully at some point have a solution that is just like Todd was saying, a package you install and you're up and running. And so you don't know that behind the scenes it installed, other things it needed. Maybe that's not possible. But I'm thinking, for example, SQLite, like sometimes SQLite gets, bundled into some little thing you run and download. And it's just, it's almost considered a library, the fact that it uses SQLite for this little app or something. Now, maybe that's not feasible, but it's just something I've been thinking about to just make this process easier for exchanges, and because they do need a history approach. And I think our original, some of them didn't have history, and so they couldn't do, for example, they couldn't see the actions on a multi-sig. And I know that's changing in EOS IO pretty soon here, but it was an example of like, okay, there may be things they need a history node for no matter what.
You could talk to us and we could perhaps work something out how we could provide that history for the exchanges.
Yeah, that's generally probably not going to be accepted by them, which I understand. I mean, their whole reputational, everything is based on their security. Yeah. And if they don't run those nodes themselves, I've yet to read an exchange that doesn't run the nodes themselves.
Yeah, Luke is right. From all the ones that I talked to, all of them, nobody wants to hire someone to run nodes. All of them want to run their own. So,
which I'm thankful for. I think, because, I mean, that's
usually for exchanges that they don't want to have like a large setup with Elasticsearch or a large storage solution. Usually they end up running state history and they just do a small watcher that will collect their transfers and sync to the database that they already have. All of them already have some database that tracks the user. So most of the times it's too much to run a full history solution and then to create something on top of that to connect to the thing.
That's what this Chronicle is made for, right? It is running exactly for that. You have a stream of events, you filter out what you want, and it is running already. Bittrex is running Chronicle now. It's pretty compact.
That sounds just like Chronicle. Maybe CC has the conduits built for whatever they want.
And I actually, we're working on an analytics project right now to extract data, and I'm using Chronicle as part of the ingest process, and it's been super useful. So thank you for that tool.
Thanks for the community. I mean, that was the only crowdfunding on EOS, the first and only. And it's actually a feature that, I mean, we don't have any crowdfunding anymore in EOS.
So this is a great discussion, but now, I mean, I think a few people were surprised that we were offering up the History V1 solution as the solution. And I think that's the solution all of our partners are currently running, but that's the solution we have right now. And it doesn't sound like there's kind of consensus. We need those two things. There's some that are going to want history and some that just need a node. I still don't think we have a great process for telling them what to do with that. And so
I think it's information, not availability of tooling. I mean, it's all there.
But it's where do we steer them, right? Like that's what right now they just download and they get History V1 with it, right? So that's what they're running.
Or state history works fine. I mean,
let's have a call with exchanges, maybe like 2 or 3 representatives from exchanges that work with you.
We'd like to do that. We've kind of tried to get them to even join, like, our channel that we have there for support, but maybe a little more tricky unless you guys have exchange relationships that you want to use to help set that up. But yeah, we could certainly do that. I think I agree with Eric in that, especially projects that are, exchanges, for example, that are supporting all these different tokens and all these different chains, they just want something easy. They're just like, give me something to install that's minimal, that I can run my own command line tools against to populate my own databases. And I think that's ideally what they want. Now, is it great to have all these other options and solutions? Yeah, sure, of course. I look forward to the day someday that, Defuse will be ported to work with FIO, for example. Like, I love a lot of opportunity. And I think as developers, we always like to have our, Swiss Army knife. We're gonna have all these cool little tools, but I want to think about our wallets and exchanges as it relates to FIO as like, those are our customers and we're providing them a service as they integrate the FIO protocol. So we really need to think about, we wouldn't come to a customer and just be like, hey, here's 50,000 different ways you could do something. And they're like, I don't even know what you are yet. You have to explain to me, what should I do? because I'm supposed to implement the solution, right? You know, so there's a sales and really business development side to this going forward that's much different than just, hey, we want to list your token, you know, spin up a node. It's a full process of like integrating with the FIO protocol. So we're gonna hopefully be thinking about that as we talk to these exchanges and wallets, that we're a representative of this protocol that we want them to integrate as a feature into their product and service.
It would be great to have kind of a list of requirements from them, or at least from one exchange. What exactly they expect from such a solution? What they want, what they want to monitor, how they want it to be installed. Is it just one monolithic, I don't know, Docker image with everything packed in, or they want to do little components and they want to set them up themselves? So we need some feedback from them, what they really want, what they expect, basically, what they are comfortable to work with.
I mean, the two are using the images from Todd right now, right? So that's what they're comfortable with. So I think there were some issues about they didn't really understand the full replay, right, Todd? And so, and when you tried to give them understanding of, oh, I can give you that data, they didn't totally get that. So again, these are the documents that I'd love to just point them to and say, let's just make assumptions that those work. Some kind of image works for those guys, and that they want probably history. Most of these guys do that. And most of this is just so they can show transaction history within their wallets or something like that. I know Garda is probably just doing that. The exchanges are a little different, but yeah, like Luke said, if we could just give them the straw man, I think then we could see where they diverge from that a little bit. And they're like, oh, this doesn't really meet our needs, or we just do block by block kind of reads like on some of this stuff, and we don't really use a history node. So yeah.
There is actually a new API coming from Block One. I think it's like in 2.0.6 or something. It's called Trace API. I didn't actually have a chance to work with it, but it seems to be what exchanges want, because it's coming out of a box. It's packaged with Node.js. You just enable it and you have it, and you get these traces, which should be enough.
You can just search for the traces from that block. You cannot search like traces from accounts.
No, you just read block by block. You know which block you read before. You read the next one plus one, and basically you just read everything. But
that sounds a little bit like how Defuse works. That's awesome. Well, guys, we're running out of time here. We got about a minute left.
It's not efficient, but anyway, we get that to another discussion.
I just want to.
The best thing for a change is actually modifying state history. So it only collects from a specific set of accounts, which it's not what happens today. And then they run something small on top. Otherwise, the state history will grow as big as the chain itself grow. And most of the exchanges don't want that to happen. So this, I think it would be the ideal.
That Trace API also solves that problem. You can just delete the files because it stores individual files per block. So just delete all the files.
But the exchange don't want to delete the file. They want to keep the log, the full log for their history, and they don't want to throw out data. They just want to keep their own subset of the history. This is the difference, I mean.
Cool. It sounds like we have our next topic for discussion in the Telegram, and maybe for the next meeting we have here. I want to again respect everyone's time. We just scheduled an hour. I hope this was useful. I think it was super useful for me. I think it's helpful for the Davix team to connect with you guys directly and just kind of hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for showing up. I'm just blown away. We got almost 30 people here. I really, really appreciate you guys showing up. And again, we're always open to any kind of feedback and ongoing processes of discussion. I do know that we have to get the token holders aware of you guys. That's kind of a burden on me that I'm feeling. Because the foundation doesn't vote, but I want to make sure you guys get well compensated. And I know there are backups and others that aren't necessarily getting rewarded completely to what they're doing in value. So I'm going to be working on that, open to any feedback you guys have. Thank you for the block producers who've been publishing articles about that and telling people their value as a block producer and to go vote for them. I'd love to see more of those. I will gladly share them from our social media channels as well. And again, anything else that we can do to help, we're always here, and thank you guys so much for showing up. I really appreciate it. Anything else that anyone wants to add?
There's an interview coming out with Luke in probably tomorrow.
Yay.
On my YouTube channel.
Oh, nice.
Awesome. Thank you for doing that, Anders. I appreciate it. That was a fun interview. I'm looking forward to seeing it. All right, guys. Thanks so much, and take care.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers.
Cheers, everyone.
See you guys.
Yes.
Cheers, guys.